Hey everybody, we are going to talk a little bit about science this week. Last week we did some social studies stuff with making a map of our neighborhood and walking around our neighborhood, or a map of wherever you were at. Today we're going to kind of do a different map. So if this is the first video you're watching, we in our ELA videos read a book called Lily Takes a Walk. And on one of those pages we talked about a star that she was looking at, and she said it was called the dog star. She was talking to her dog, Nikki. And she said, "Look, Nikki, there's the dog star." The dog star is actually called Sirius. It's a star, obviously, in the sky. And so I thought it would be interesting if we kind of centered a lot of the things that we were doing this week on talking about stars. So what I wanted to do is, instead of making a map now of your neighborhood, you're going to kind of try to make a map of the sky. And that's going to be pretty hard. So what we're going to do is kind of talk about it a little bit differently. So while we're talking about science, I think it's going to be pretty interesting if at night, if we have time, hopefully your parents will let you stay up until it is at least dark enough to see sometimes. And it might not be every night, but see if you can look on the weather channel or on a weather app, and see if you can find a nice clear night. So one of these nights this week, you can stay up and look at the stars. There should be a couple clear nights. Summer's usually pretty good to watch the stars. But what I also want to kind of think about is, when are some times when you can't see the stars, and are they always there? So that's one of the questions I want you to think about. Are the stars always there even if you can't see them? All right. And what is a star? So below in the little description of this video, I'm going to leave some links about stars and about certain types of things. And we're also going to talk about constellations. And constellations, I think, are really neat. And you may have heard of constellations, you might not. But I will go over a little bit about what they are, and I'm going to post a video about constellations too. Somebody who explains it a little bit better than I do. I'm not a scientist, and I think it was interesting watching this video, and it made me kind of interested to do some more research and look up stars and things like that. So, first thing we need to know is, what is a star? And we learned in science this year that there are 3 different kinds of materials, I guess. There's liquid, there's gas, and there's a solid. When we talk about stars, stars are made up of gases. They're made up of hydrogen and helium. And when we think of helium, we think of stuff you put in a balloon to make it float. But stars, they're made up of gases, and it's kind of neat because when you look up, you can see the stars and you think, oh, they're not, if I can see them, they're not that far away. But stars are it would take us, and I think I read this, it would take us 81,000 years to get to the nearest star. I don't know anybody that's ever lived for 81,000 years. That is a long time. And if you look up in the sky, you think sometimes, you could start counting the stars and you could get pretty far. But there are over 100,000 million stars just in the Milky Way. And the Milky Way is the galaxy that we are in. So the more and more you learn about science and space and things like that, the more and more you want to know. So if you want to know about galaxies and stars and constellations, there are so many cool videos, and I'd love for you guys to find anything that you want to and share it with me so that I can do some cool projects and research too. So while we're talking about this, what I think would be neat is if we start the week by starting to keep a weather journal. And it should be a pretty good week for that, because there's going to be some really hot days. There's going to be some rain, maybe. There's going to be some clouds. So we'll see. What I want to do is, if you're watching this on Monday, I want you to start your weather journal today. And what I want you to do is, I want you to keep a note of if it's sunny out during the day, what the temperature is, if you feel like it's sticky. So we're going to use some of those describing words like we did in our writing, to describe how you feel during the day. Is it sticky? Is it raining? Is it cloudy? Is it dark? Is it bright? Is it hot? Is it cold? It probably shouldn't be cold, but anything that you can use to describe the weather. I want you to describe the weather every day. And you can do it even more than once a day because you might wake up in the morning and say, hey, it's really nice out. And then on a day like today, it's Sunday right now, it's 95 degrees out. You might walk outside and say, nope, I want to go right back inside. It's very warm. So I want you to start by keeping a weather journal. Then the one night, if you get to stay up more than one night, that would be pretty neat to watch, to look at stars. I want you to take a look at the weather for that day. And if you can see the stars, I want you to look at the weather for that day and see, okay, well, it was sunny all day, and then I look up at night and I can see the stars. I want you to see if there's any weather that changes your ability to see the stars. What we're also going to do is when we're looking at the stars, we're going to talk a little bit about constellations. Now, constellations are groups of stars that it's kind of like if you are doing a connect the dots. So if you had a bunch of dots, let's say the stars in the sky, if you had a bunch of dots and you started connecting them to make pictures, you could connect the dots and make a picture. A constellation is pretty much connect the dots for the sky. So what I'm going to do on the next slide, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you a constellation that I just made. I put a bunch of stars on a piece of, or on my screen, and then I just started connecting some stars together to make a constellation. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to do a constellation that you want to make out of anything, and you're going to draw it on a piece of paper, or you can do it, like I said, I do a lot of my stuff in Keynote. That's on a Apple, it's on Macs or iPads. Again, if you have something else that you want to do it on, you can make your own constellation in whatever program you want or on paper. It's just as good on paper as it is on anything else. But what I also want you to do is I want you to find and research a constellation. You can use your parents to help you. This is going to be your family activity too, is to look up a constellation and then go try to find it in the night sky one night. And what I want you to do is take a look about what that constellation is. So some of the ones you might have heard are the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, Orion. I talked about the Dog Star, which there's a whole constellation that goes around that. So there's some pretty famous constellations, and they'll go over some of them in the video that I attached to this. But I'll show you kind of what a constellation is, just something that I made, and you can take a look at. So on my screen, you see just a bunch of stars. Now, you can do anything you want. This is kind of like when you look up at clouds and you think, what does this cloud look like? I have a different idea of what this cloud might be than my friend does. So what I did is I thought, you know what? I really like foxes. I'm going to try to figure out a way that I can make a constellation that looks like a fox. So what I did is I started taking stars and I started connecting them. And I made 2 ears, and then I worked my way down and made a snout for my fox, and then it came all the way back up and I connected it back. And I said, you know what? That's my fox constellation. So your job, you have 2 jobs. Your job is to, 1, make any kind of constellation you want. It can be anything you want, but you have to come up with something. It can't just be random lines and it doesn't mean anything. I want you to come up with a constellation. I want you to name your own constellation. And then when you get a chance to actually go outside, I want you to find a constellation that you researched and looked up. It can be the Little Dipper, the Big Dipper, it can be anything. You don't have to use those 2. You don't have to use any ones that you just found or that I just talked about. But I want you to go outside and take a look and see if you can find a constellation at night. When you do that, well, hopefully you're able to do that. But I want you to also check the weather that day and see if the weather made a difference to you being able to see the stars or not see the stars. So I will, let's see. You know what? Maybe I will put, maybe I'll make a big thing of stars, and I will put it on a PDF, and I'll put that in Google Drive, so that if you do want to just print out my stars, you can make your own constellation out of the paper that I give you, and you don't have to draw hundreds and thousands of stars. So that's what I'll do. I'll make a paper just like this for you, that if you want to print out and connect the dots, you can. If you want to put it on your computer and use your iPad to connect the dots or whatever you might have, you can do that too. And then if you want to share your a constellation with us on Flipgrid, you are more than welcome to. Remember, it's my last name, Andrelzik, 5225. So when you get to your family activity, I'm going to explain a little bit more about what I want you to do for your family activity, but it's going to revolve around using your weather journal and using your knowledge of constellations to go out and have a nice family activity where you can all create and research and find out a constellation that you all like. All right, I hope you guys have an awesome day, an awesome night, whatever it might be, and I will see you in some other video, unless this is the last one you watch. Then I'll see you next week.